Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. The first season of National Geographic's Genius explored the life of Albert Einstein. And with this season, the show is exploring a different kind of genius, the artist. Genius Picasso breaks the life of Pablo Picasso into two periods, the rebellious young years, played by Alex Rich, and the older years, where Antonio Banderas plays a more comfortable, successful Picasso searching for his inner activist as fascism spreads across Europe. Let's take a look.
What is he like, this Picasso?
People say I am a genius, that it all came easily to me. The truth is,
the only way to be a true artist is to work day and night. Lose yourself in it completely.
I want to paint like you, Papa.
then I will teach you.
Can either of you paint something as extraordinary as that?
Your technique is all wrong. You have talent, but no discipline.
I need to see things in a new way. Smash the rules.
She's his mistress?
One of them.
How many does he have?
How many women has he painted?
I want to paint you.
I want to paint you.
How is your new girlfriend?
She's whatever I need her to be. A bird, a storm, an idea.
One of us is leaving, Pablo.
You fight it out.
You were the one who said too much passion burns itself out.
You don't think I'm always right, do you?
You have children, women you love. Some things are more important than art.
No. Not to me.
He's a complete degenerate.
You did this.
No. You did. Everyone wants something from the great Picasso.
Everybody, big round of applause for Antonio Banderas and Alex Rich of Genius Picasso. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on a beautiful telling of the story of Picasso, or at least these two periods of his life.
Thank you.
It's so fascinating the way that they broke it up, and I tried to get to it in the intro, but a man who is at one moment a rebel, and then a man who is trying to discover his rebel once again later in his life. I thought that was so smart. But I read that this is not the first time someone's asked you to play Picasso. Is that true?
It's true. It's not the first time. But for whatever reason, I rejected the possibility of playing him before in my career. I suppose it has to do with the fact that I am from the same place where he was born. There's a sense of responsibility, playing a character that was bigger than life and that I idolize completely. And so it was not until Ron Howard and National Geographic came on that I thought, okay, there is no escape from this. With these guys, I have to just jump on the pot and do it. Yeah.
Did it also have to do with not telling his story in an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 40 minutes rather than like multiple episodes?
True, that's one, because I have done very little television. You discover when you do television that for a biopic actually is better, is a better tool than movies. Movies probably are better for an event. They're masterful people, careful that in 2 hours they can tell very much about a personality. But 10 hours give you the possibility of getting into all the complexities and the depth of the human soul of a character like this. Definitely.
What is it about Picasso that you were most drawn to, or was the thing that you latched on the most as an actor?
Yeah. Well, as an artist, the possibility of exploring of a guy who actually went from a style to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Picasso has many painters in one, and all of them were good, and all of them you can recognize Picasso. In the artistic side, it's unquestionable, obviously. The personal side of him was a mystery for me a little bit. What I've discovered about this character that I think is very interesting is how independent he is. The strength that he has to don't marry, even if he married twice, to don't marry with anybody. He married with Picasso. And that can be very good, and that can be very bad. So there are some collateral damages that he left behind. and that affected people. You know, I've been saying that many times these days, but he's almost like a very strong, big planet with a tremendous gravity, and sometimes people got satellites in that orbit, and it was almost impossible to live. You know,
Fly too close to his sun.
definitely.
He really is one of the, I mean, it's a cliche to say that he's one of the great artists, but if you go into a museum and there are Picassos there, suddenly you realize it's like, yeah, he's like this planet. Everything kind of goes back to Picasso in a lot of ways after a certain point in art. Alex, you know, this is a huge undertaking for you. I'm curious, you go into this, do you want to portray the young Picasso, or do you watch what Mr. Banderas is doing and you want to portray the young version of Picasso that he's portraying? How did the two of you craft these two different performances?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite the journey. I think what's nice about this series too is that right in the beginning we can have that little bit of variation between the two of us, because part of the joy of the series is part of the joy of the series is finding how the two come together. And because we got to travel all over Europe together, and because we were on set at the same times, usually if I could steal away or if he could steal away, we could watch each other. We had dialect coaches who could help me sound a little bit more like him, because his accent is the accent of Malaga, which is
Yeah, baby.
yeah, baby.
Yeah, you don't have to try that hard to get the Picasso accent.
No, I work very much in my accent since I was born.
Yeah, exactly. So we were able to, craft different movements, different outlooks. We could talk about not only the physical aspects of Picasso, but also the way that he thinks and how he processes the world, and how, the Malagueño culture and Andalusian culture played in. And it was nice to be able to work together to create.
Was there parts of you guys that never wanted to make them, the characters or the performances, too similar? Because it is really about two different versions of Picasso. While they are the same man, I do feel like they have to kind of stand out as two separate characters almost.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that comes in
Just being two different people?
Well, definitely being two different people, but also just the scripts.
Mm-hmm.
When he's younger, he has a very different outlook. He's in Bateau Lavoir, which is where he's poor and bohemian, and then he comes up in the world and becomes this different man. So a lot of the progression is written into the scripts, and we could just tell the story that way and try to find through lines.
There are even external dichotomies and contradictions in the character. For example, when he was very young, he dresses very academically, very nicely, very classic. As he goes older, it's the opposite. He goes into the pop movement on the 60s, so he started wearing these, colorful shirts and pants and crazy stuff, medallions, rings. It's a very interesting character in that aspect. He plays the opposite of what you think that he should play. Normally when people get older, they get a little bit more conservative in the way that they look. In the case of Picasso, it's completely different. So, yeah, there are two different parts, because at the same time, it's not only the story of Picasso, it's a portrait of what happened in the Europe of the time, since the beginning of the century until 1970s. And you see a little bit of the Spanish Civil War. You go through also the occupation of Paris by the Nazis in the 40s, in the Second World War. So there is a number of events that you see, and a number of characters that come with Picasso that were very important too at the time, from Matisse to
Georges Braque.
Yeah, Georges Braque, Coco Chanel. There is a number of characters that actually play in the same environment in which they were living. So when you see the TV show, it's not only specific about the life of Pablo Picasso, about the lives of many of the people that surrounded him.
When you guys got cast as Picasso, did you take it as an opportunity to just sort of go look at as much Picasso as you could? I imagine it's like, oh, I'm doing research for my part. I'm just going to sit in a museum and look at this beautiful painting for an hour.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I went to the museums in Paris and in Barcelona and in Malaga, and he, was much more, I think, familiar with his work than I was before I started, so I had to catch up.
No, yeah, I was very familiar with his work for the fact that he was born in my hometown. You have to think that the first time that I heard about Picasso, I was very little. And Spain, I was living at that time under a dictatorship. It was 15 at the time that Franco The general that was in charge of Spain died, and
How old were you when he died?
it was 15.
15.
It was
Wow.
in the 28th of November, 1975, and so we didn't have so many heroes outside, and we heard very little about those people that were exiled from Spain, painters, intellectuals of any kind, you know. But Picasso was almost impossible to stop. It was just too big, the light that this character, you know, produced for Franco to stop him. So we knew about Picasso, and it created an incredible curiosity in me since very early years, you know. So I was very familiar, basically, with his painting and with his art since I was a little kid. Then there was a Museo Picasso also in Malaga, you know. So yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Do you have a favorite Picasso?
Many, many. There are paintings that are key in the history of art. The Mademoiselle de Famignon is a painting that is very important because it changed actually the perception of painting until that time. It changes everything. Guernica, of course, because it's a painting that actually goes against the war. It's a painting that you can actually use to talk about what is happening these days, for example, in Syria. And all the different wars that in the Second World War happened until our days, because it's a painting that at a certain point, and actually Dora Maar, one of his lover, photograph in this 7 portrait of the process of making the Guernica. At some point, the painting was taking position politically. There was a fist, for example, of the Communist Party. You know, the symbol of the communists, a fist. But at some point, Picasso thought, no, I have to make it bigger, and I have to make it more international, and actually not positioning the painting in a political regime, ideology. So he took that thing out, and he put a candlelight, actually, hold by what I think is Maria Teresa Walter at that point. She's holding the candlelight. But then, if you go from the beginning and you see, you know, when he arrived to Paris, he already painted like Velázquez. He can do figurative painting with the same light of Vermeer or the big masters. But then he went and he became kind of Toulouse-Lautrec. He started painting all of this, bohemian life, beautiful. And then Casagemas died. He goes in the blue period for a couple of years. And then
I love the blue period. It's just like
the blue period. Do you know that? It's very interesting. The blue period actually was the lowest point him in financial means, you know, because nobody wanted those paintings. Nobody wanted to buy that thing because they thought, oh, it's too sad. You know, people was used to Renoirs, flowers, landscapes, things like that. And so he came with this thing that was so realistic. And so he came out of that through Cubism and also through the pink period. And then he met with Maria Teresa Walter, and he went to this kind of neoclassicism in which everything seems to be pregnant. You know, men, women, nature, everything is bigger than life. It's because of the birth of his daughter, Maya, who actually is still alive in Paris at 82, you know, and we have contact with her during the time that we were shooting. But I am talking too much. You talk.
no, this is wonderful. Everyone's getting like a nice little lesson in Picasso, which I think is so
engaged.
important. Did you have something that you wanted to?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I was gonna
Your turn.
No, I was just gonna piggyback off that nobody wanted the blue periods in their house because they thought that it would be just such a downer to walk into a room and see this blue depressed painting. But
some of the most beautiful paintings. I mean, all of his work is so beautiful, and what is so striking about Picasso, if all you know is sort of his most famous painting, is that, as you were just saying, his work covers so much ground from the beginning. There's so many different styles that he's utilizing. Whichever one he jumps into, he's the master of.
It's interesting because at the time that he just abandoned figurative painting, and he never was an abstract painting. There is a mistake just because he never did abstraction. There were always figures in his paintings, you know, but the people start just trying to establish a symbology in his paintings and iconography, and they start to interpret the paintings. But every time that they ask him, you know, in the Guernica, what is the meaning of the bull? And he always said the meaning of the bull is that is a bull. And the meaning of the horse is that there is a horse there and there is a woman crying there with a dead body of a kid, and that's it. He never tried to reveal anything that he did or tried to give more importance than what it really was. But everybody that is up in front of a painting of Picasso construct a whole entire life about, why he painted this or that, But I think that is actually one of his successes, that he kept the mystery always there. He talked very little about his private life, which is also very interesting.
The great ones usually do.
Yeah, it's true.
I remember an interview with Basquiat one time where someone was like, "You use lots of yellows. Why do you do that?" And he's, "Because they're brighter." It's like very simple. One of the storylines of the show, especially during the Guernica painting and the lead up to that, is the sort of discussion of how much an artist owes to the political times that are happening around them and how much they should become an activist. And I think a lot is expected of actors now, as well as directors, specifically in the times that we're living right now, as the sort of seem to show a little bit more, and things are kind of breaking apart, and we're becoming a little bit more divided, as much as I hate using that term because I think we're divided for a reason right now. What do you think is the responsibility of the actor as an artist?
I can if you don't want. Okay.
Dive in.
No, I mean, you're right. I think that if an actor is going to take a political stand about something, then that actor needs to be very well researched and very equipped to handle that issue and inform and be informed about their opinion. I think that there's a mistake that people make sometimes, that if I have a platform, I have to say something if it's not, and people make snap judgments and react kind of gutturally when they have a platform of people who take them very seriously. So I think the responsibility is definitely there, but with that responsibility comes the need to do research and not just speak to speak because people are listening. So I think it's also nice to separate the artist a little bit, because you want, if you're going to be an actor in a series like this where we both kind of have to transform into somebody else, you need to keep that mystery that Picasso had to a certain extent, so that people can see you in different ways and they can suspend their disbelief instead of just seeing the actor. You want them to see the person the actor is trying to become. So it's a multifaceted concept.
I agree. There is something that you have said that is totally right. It needs to be totally informed and to have all the data and the information before you produce any kind of opinion about something, because you have to recognize, and it would be, wrong if you don't, that you exercise a certain power as a public person. When you're a public person, you talk, that thing resonates.
It spreads around very quickly.
Absolutely. So, and you can hurt people if you don't have all the data in your hands. Now, there is a moral obligation to actually speak out for things that you consider that are fair. It does depend on each one. Because sometimes I have spoken and I created a storm around me, and at the same time you have to be very courageous to defend a cause, because you know that it's going to be, especially in political issues, forget it, man. The people is really polarized, and if you support one side instead of the other, you're going to be whacked by the other side. Obviously, and at the same time you think, well, but this is my public. Maybe there are people on the other side that I don't support, that they love my career, they are going to abandon me. So you depend on that. You have to make that decision very consequentially. You have to think about what you are going to say. You have to think actually that you can help people that are suffering. Normally, there are cases that are very clear, that you support, the situation that is happening, for example, now in Hollywood with women who have been abused. Anybody who have certain decency have to speak out and say and defend that, because it's true. It's a situation that just shows in Hollywood, because we do have a magnifying glass over ourselves all the time. But this is a situation that is happening everywhere. Everywhere. This is happening in banking, this is happening in offices, this is happening everywhere in the world, and it has to stop. And so if you can put a little bit of your help on that, it's necessary. So that moral obligation is always there. Choose your case, tie your teeth, and go for it, and risk a little bit. If you're going to be kicking your ass, it's okay. You know, you don't have to be loved all the time by everybody. You have to take options sometimes.
Was there any fear or hesitation going into playing Picasso, giving the kind of current conversation, especially in entertainment when it comes to respecting women?
No, because first of all, we are not judging him. We are performing him. The judge will come for the audience when they see, you know, his life. And that's why at the beginning of our conversation, I said to you that it was very important the National Geographic was behind, because this is an institution that has a lot of prestige gained during many years of very factual work. You know, when they talk properly about something. So we don't have reports anyway of Picasso abusing women. Now, he damaged women, yes. Yes, but
the show talks about that and shows
right. I mean, he was unfaithful. Yes, it's notorious, very unfaithful. You know, I mean, notoriously unfaithful. And his wives knew, you know, and he treated some of his lovers actually as wives. He said, you know, that he got 4 kids with 3 different wives. I mean, women that he was not married with. So it's, you know, that's there. And he abandoned women. Yes, he did. And he produced a lot of pain. Yes, he did. Not only with women, also with some of his dear friends. He got fights with Chagall. He got fights with Braque, with Matisse. You know, so this is a very strong personality of a guy. But to establish a morality judgment when you are going to perform him, wrong. Wrong. You have to go in the day by day with him, you know, and then at the end the people will decide, you know. Many people that are going to watch the TV show are going to say, well, you know, I pardon him in his personal life because he was such an artist and because it was another time. He's a guy coming from the 19th century. Probably the education influence on him. This kind of cultural Catholic of, you know, of his mother, whatever. You know, you can pardon. And it's good to pardon people and forgive people. You know, I live in a country that we used to say that we have a forgiveness for every sin. So that's fine. But there must be another people that says, no, I don't buy this guy. And that's fine too. We're not trying to defend him. We're just trying to portray him, and then people just will decide.
Yeah, I think it's also important to draw the distinction between Picasso's relationships where he fell in love with love, and then he usually fell out first. So you have all these women who are in his orbit that are still in love with him, but he's already moved on, and that causes a lot of emotional turmoil. And I think there's a definite clear distinction between that and somebody who, you know, molests people and abuses people. So I think in this time, it is important to draw that distinction so you don't do a disservice to the people who've been, you know, like really abused and assaulted.
I mean, you have to think that some of those relationships, he didn't oblige women to come with him. Françoise Gillot, who lives in this city. She's 96 years old, I think. She was 21 when she went with him. He was 64. He was married. He got a ring in his finger. And he was already notorious for having lovers. So if you were stepping in that territory, you know, she probably knew that it was not a normal relationship, or what we understand for a normal relationship. Picasso sometimes is upset and he turns around and just screams at her like she was the granddaughter, because that's the difference of ages. So it's very complicated to establish a judgment, you know, about the behavior in that couple, for example, you know, because you have to go in the everyday behavior of them, you know, to understand, you know, what was going on there.
I guess the fear would be, and I don't think the show does this at all, is that you as the actor go in not establishing any kind of judgment, but you also hope that the way that it gets edited and the way that it gets shot also doesn't have that judgment, or doesn't depict him in too positive of a light, which is going to make people go, well, come on, what about this aspect of him? You're shying away from this stuff.
But I don't think it was like that. When we read the script, there are bright sides and there are dark sides of the character, really dark. And they are there. Yeah.
The script definitely, and everything that's in the show is well researched, and there are historical facts to support it. And we tried to present a very three-dimensional picture of the guy, which is I think also important, because we hope that this portrayal of this man contributes to the conversation. So people who've been in similar relationships or feel that they've been, it really comes down to how somebody feels about the relationship. If they feel like they've been abused, then they need to come forward and speak about it, if that will be therapeutic or if that will be helpful. But I think that in this show in particular, we tried to stay as complete and as truthful as possible so that we don't sugarcoat or...
Yeah, I don't think the show sugarcoats anything at all.
No, I don't think it does.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Who's the question? Yeah. Right here.
Hi. I read somewhere that the first movie you made in the United States, you learned your lines phonetically. I was wondering if that was true and what the name of the movie was.
Yeah, the movie was The Mambo Kings, 1991. And at that time, there were no ambulances or police passing behind you. No, and so I didn't speak the language at the time. There was a movie that I did prior to that. It was called Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. That was very successful here in America. So the director, Arnie Glincher, who, by the way, is an art dealer who owns a gallery here in New York called Pace Gallery, who actually had the representation for Picasso in the United States. It's very interesting because through him, I met Paloma Picasso, daughter of Pablo Picasso and Françoise, in Los Angeles. And that night, it was a beautiful dinner with her. And at some point, I was talking with her in Spanish. My English didn't exist. And I see her, she was just closing her eyes during the conversation. I thought, oh my God, I am boring her beyond belief. And so I just said to her, are you tired? You want to go back to this? I said, no. I just close my eyes because when I close my eyes, I see my father. She said, because my father never lost the Malagueño accent, from South Spain. When he spoke Spanish to me, it sounded like you, man. And it was like, oh, wow. That was first approach to Picasso.
I'm going to go home and try to paint, see how that goes. See if I've got that
you are right.
too.
Exactly.
I learned my lines phonetically. Yeah.
Next question. Right here.
Hi, my name is Markel. I have a question for both of you. I know from going to art school that they had us learn about various different artists, including Picasso. And as you are artists as well, stepping into Picasso, and now the film is out, and stepping out of it, what do you guys feel were your biggest takeaways in diving into Picasso's life and now going back to your regular life?
Yeah, for me, the biggest discovery, which is something that I knew, and we all artists knew, but when you see so close and you get in the shoes of an artist like Pablo Picasso, you realize more, is the honesty that this guy had, that plays like a knife of two blades. He plays unbelievable for his art. He never looked for the applause. He is completely sincere, honest, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all the time. He is just looking for the truth all the time, He doesn't marry to anybody, as I said before. But now, that in his personal life was very painful because all the behavior that you may have in order to do damage somebody, when you just break a relationship, when the love is gone, when all of that disappeared with Pablo Picasso. When Pablo Picasso just didn't like you or didn't want to do something, he just did it. And it was very, very painful in that aspect. But I learned that a real artist is a very serious thing. It's not a joke. And there is a big deal of sacrifice because at the end, even himself paid for that, a big, huge price, which was, in his case, an absolute solitude. His best friend at the end was a guy from Spain called Arias, who was his hairdresser. That was it for him.
Someone he paid, basically, his best friend at the end of his life was someone that he paid to be there.
Yeah. I think it's also diving this deeply into what created the level of reinvention that was necessary and the determination and how his personal life played in directly to that. I think a lot of the drama in his personal life was rooted in his seeking new inspiration, and you can track it in his work. It's almost like a diary, where the blue period is when Casagemas, his best friend, kills himself, and we dive into this depression, and then you get the rose period where Fernand, his the love that he was with at the time. She really inspires him to come out of that depression, and you can track through his personal life the different movements in his art, and seeing how your whole life needs to be funneled into whatever you decide to be your genius or whatever path you take. That was an interesting discovery that we could find real time.
Next question.
You succeeded with projecting total immersion into another personality. How did you achieve this transformation? How did you do rehearse and all the other things?
You don't do this alone.
Exactly.
You have a team of great professionals behind you. And we have, for us, two departments were incredibly important to the creation of our character. And one of them was makeup, obviously, and that especially for me. And then costume designers too. They made a big chunk of the role. You know, when you start using all of those, costumes that Picasso was using, they did for me them a little bit bigger than normal. So I look a little bit, bigger, and they put also on all my girls, my women, wives, and lovers, a little bit of a lift. So they made us both a little bit smaller. It's not like we are like Los Lakers, but we are average, right?
Yeah, and Picasso was 5'4", so they cheated all of the perspectives that we would reflect.
So all of that work was done. For me, the most challenging was the makeup. It was very hard. I mean, you have to think that I was picked at the hotel sometimes at 2:30 in the morning. I got in the chair at 3. And then you have to be there for 5 hours and a half. And so to be ready at 8:30, and then you have to shoot for 10 hours. So when
what do you do in the chair?
You're gonna kill yourself, basically.
I've always been curious. Like, you can't really go over lines too much because you can't move your face.
No.
So what do you do?
People said you sleep. How are you gonna sleep with somebody just doing this in your nose and putting glue inside your lips? Attaching glue here, because you have to think that they have to look for those places where you don't see the seams of the different pieces of makeup. So they come to your eyelids, they come inside your mouth in several places, inside your nose, ears, everything. Is very, very, very uncomfortable. You
like it?
Yes, I love it.
The impression that you really like it.
I love it. And I am doing a movie. I went from another movie and said, I'm going for another movie in which I'm just going to take Picasso out of my body. So I am doing another version of Dr. Dolittle in London with Robert Downey Jr., and they put a beard on me. So I have glue a whole entire day. I say, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Exactly.
But no, it's tough, But then it stays there forever, and that is the point. You think about that. Then basically you say, okay.
I mean, Andy looks incredible, right? Look at that.
Better this look good forever than look mediocre or look bad. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we have time for one more.
Hi, this is going to be an online question. Leon D would like to know, if Pablo Picasso were alive today and you got a chance to meet him, what would you say?
Ooh.
I personally, I will go to him and I will give him a hug, and I will say to him, let's go to Malaga, man. Let's just have a walk on the beach. I'm going to take you to a place where the people in Malaga can applaud you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really. I think I'll leave it there. No, I would thank him so hard for, one, just creating his legacy, and also for creating a space for us to collaborate and try to, step into those shoes. I think there would be too many deep questions that I would probably short circuit.
Guys, congratulations on the series. It's beautiful, incredible work. It premieres April 27th, I believe, on National Geographic.
24th.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Yeah,
for
next
saving me on
Tuesday.
that one. Genius Picasso, April 24th, National Geographic. Everybody give Antonio and Alex a round of applause. Let's hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.